Here we go. So, good morning, everybody. I'm Laura Hunter from Drop the Leash Dog Training. I'm here this morning with Celeste Gagnon, and we are here this morning to talk about why do your dogs do all those behaviors that you find so annoying? Why do our dogs, why do we? Because we have the same issues you guys do. So anyway, so why are we talking about this? Why shouldn't we just be talking about how to train your dog? Well, next week we'll talk about how to train your dog. But I think it is important that people understand why our dogs do what they do at times. And I'm finding that as we go on, I'm spending less time with my students actually teaching dogs and a lot more time explaining why dogs do what they do and how it influences our lives with us. So let's just get started. Celeste, I'm hearing something in the background. Is that you or me?
Is it a man voice?
Yeah.
That's my husband. Hang on a second. Let's see if he can quiet down.
Yeah. Tell him to tone it down, Wade. Okay, I'll let you go and I'll keep talking. Okay, so, contrary to our egocentric sort of human way of thought, we actually aren't the major influence in our dog's life. There are a lot of genetic and environmental considerations in our dog's lives that are way more powerful at influencing and shaping their behaviors than our manners 101 classes. And I think if you don't understand the dog in front of you, for a lot of people might be struggling and frustrated with their dog's behavior. And that can continue right through our lives and our relationship with our dogs. So here's my first thought. If we throw this out to you guys, if we make a list of all the behaviors that our dogs like to do, let's do that. Barking, digging, chewing, biting, puppies for sure, jumping up, chasing, all of those behaviors. And then if we make a list of all the behaviors that we actually want from our dogs, what we get is sitting, lying down, walking calmly beside us, coming back to us, and being calm and quiet. So I'm hoping that already you guys are seeing that those lists don't match. Those lists, there's not one thing on any of those lists that match. So why not? Today we're going to talk about why they don't match and all the influences on your dog's behavior. And we're going to start with evolution. Because I spent a lot of time in Jean Donaldson's program talking about evolution, and I wasn't sure why, but it did make dog behavior in modern world much clearer to me. There are two different categories of training in our dogs' lives. One we can call flexibility type training, which is the real-time training that we do with our dogs. So we can teach them. We can gradually shape and change behaviors through teaching and practicing with our dogs. We all know this. Everybody here who's listening has a dog. I'm sure you've taught your dogs behaviors and tricks and sit and down and shake a paw. So that's pretty easy stuff to teach, and it's flexible. We can change it if we want it to. The other category of behaviors is what we call pre-installed learning. And that's not something that most people think about. And I spend a lot of time talking to people about that pre-installed learning. And it is learning that is encoded in your dog's brain, just like software that's pre-installed in your computer. We have a term for it in dog world. We call these behaviors fixed action patterns or modal action patterns. And these are all the behaviors that I mentioned earlier on the dog's to-do list. And you, unfortunately, don't have a lot of control over those behaviors. I'm pretty sure anybody with a new puppy, and I've seen a lot of those lately, can attest to the fact that they have absolutely no control over biting at this point in their lives, because we spend a lot of time talking about it in our Zooms. So why are these behaviors so powerful? Why are they stuck in your dog's heads right from the get-go? Why are they the behaviors that dogs choose to do? Because they kept animals alive at one point. They are behaviors that they're instinctive responses. Your dog doesn't have to learn it. And because they don't have to learn it, it's just there in the moment when they need it. So every one of those behaviors had a survival purpose for your dog. So all of that puppy biting and chewing is about learning to kill and dissect and eat your prey and defend the resources from your competitors. So if there's anything left over, you don't want your competitors to get it. You want to have it for the next day. Digging is about burying anything that you've killed so your competitors can't find it, dig it up and eat it. Chasing, pretty evident. That's about chasing prey. Rolling in stinky stuff is about masking your scent from your prey and from your competitors. And I love this one. Rooting through your garbage in your house is actually just food acquisition, because in addition to being prey animals, dogs were also opportunistic scavengers. So they were always looking for food everywhere. And of course, humping is about just perpetuating the species. So dogs needed all these behaviors for 30,000 years to stay alive. And just because we've put leashes on them and we feed them their food from bowls, it doesn't really change their brains. I'm sure that if you caught your dog in the middle of one of those behaviors, I always say this to my puppy people, if you could just talk to your puppy for 5 minutes and say, why are you biting me all day, every day? They would look at you and say, I don't know, there's just something in my brain that tells me I need to do this. So, they are instinctual behaviors that are totally encoded in your dog's brain. The problem for us is that they aren't flexible behaviors. We can't really change them, and we can't eliminate them. The dogs will keep on performing these behaviors because their brains are telling them there is a need for them to practice and get good at them. Gene Donaldson, my mentor, says that you can't put a brick wall in front of a natural behavior. It's just not going to work. So good news is there is something that we can do about it. What we can do is change the context in which they perform their behaviors. So we do that a lot right now in the puppy classes. We're saying to the puppies, I'm sorry you can't chew on my arms, my legs, and any other body parts, but here I'm going to, just calmly put you in your crate or your X-Pen, and I'm going to give you something really great that you can chew on instead. So we're not punishing the dog. We're not trying to eliminate the biting because it is impossible at this point. But what we're doing them is we're giving them a more socially acceptable context, at least from our perspective. We're giving them a more socially acceptable outlet for that behavior. And we can do that with almost any of those behaviors that we see in our dogs. If this is where I think of Gimli all the time. Your dog, Celeste, is, if you have a dog that likes to rip stuff up and tear stuff apart, you give Gimli stuff, right? And he loves it, right?
He does love it. He does. And you know what? He really does know the difference between what he can tear up and what he can't. Even if they look like a kid's stuffed toy, he knows to leave alone, but his stuffed toys he can dissect.
Oh, cool. That's a great point. I never thought to include that. Mm-hmm. Exactly. So we call this enrichment. And enrichment is defined as species-typical behaviors that fill a need. And they're doing more and more of it in the zoos, because I know Celeste keeps posting stuff on Games That Train about enrichment activities for hippos and giraffes.
Oh, I love it. Love
it. They are filling a need for those animals, because it was a big issue in zoos, because animals were getting stressed out because they couldn't perform those behaviors that were so fulfilling for them. So, Gimli's a great example. He rips stuff up, he tears stuff apart, he does it in a way that you can handle. And as you pointed out, they can learn context. Dogs are very context specific, so we can definitely do that with them. So for dogs, enrichment is super important as well. Even though they don't live in a zoo, we can offer them things like agility, fly ball, scent work, tracking, lure coursing. We've got enrichment activities such as foraging. In Gimli's case, ripping things up. Celeste, what else do we offer for enrichment? Can you think of anything else?
Well, we have done some posts on nose work.
Yes.
I mean, yeah. I mean, anything that encourages them to exercise something that makes them happy in a way that makes you happy.
Yeah, one that we have here, which is quite common, is digging, because Maddie, one of my Aussies, she's a big digger, and so she is allowed to dig to her heart's content as long as she digs in one specific spot. So she has a whole condominium apartment complex under the evergreens around the pool, and we're totally fine with that. And she can dig out in the backfield because she has a need to dig. The important point here is that we can't eliminate those behaviors because the dogs feel they need them. So what we have to do is replace them. So what I'm going to do actually is in the comments after we're finished talking here, I'm going to put a link to Canine Enrichment for the Real World, which is a fantastic book for dog owners. We try and get everybody in the program to read it. It's not just about great ideas for enrichment, it's about the need for dogs to be able to work these behaviors out and have an opportunity to perform these behaviors. So I will put their book in the comments, and because I just put a quote from Jean Donaldson, I will also put her book in as well, which is oh my gosh, I'm having an Alzheimer's moment, Celeste.
Which one?
The culture class, right?
Oh, okay, yeah, culture class.
Yeah, I will put that in as well, because that's a fantastic book about dog behavior and understanding dog behavior. And I've got some more stuff we'll throw in as we go through here. So we have these dogs who spend 30,000 years just, getting through life, surviving on all these instinctive behaviors. And then we came along and they kind of started to hang out with us. And what we decided to do was to take some of these instinctive behaviors and either select or deselect for specific ones, because we wanted dogs who would be useful as working dogs for us. And so we selected certain specific traits for creating hunting dogs, protection dogs, pulling dogs, sled dogs, and herding dogs. And I'm sure there are more, but those are the top ones that I can think of. So we selected for certain traits and we deselected for others. And I'm not going to go into the science of that because I'm not qualified, and B, we don't have time. But just to give you an example, herding dogs. So they selected herding dogs for the ability to chase, because we want them to herd the sheep, but deselected the part of the predatory sequence where the dog actually kills the animal and eats it, because definitely killing the sheep and eating it wasn't going to be productive. So people started to play around with a lot of these traits, and it was great because we bred all of these dogs to have meaningful jobs that filled their lives. They were working dogs and they spent their days working. And that was terrific back then, but we have evolved, supposedly. And now the problem is that most of our dogs these days are simply pet dogs. They no longer have jobs. So, some of them spend as much as, 20, 22 hours a day in their houses. So I'm hoping at this point people can see where this is going. We've taken dogs with jobs and turned them into dogs that just hang out on couches. And I think after this past year, we might have some empathy for how that feels, because a lot of us have gone from people with jobs to people that have been hanging out on couches.
Yeah.
So I actually found this fantastic quote. I was listening to a really amazing podcast that I just found this morning, and it's a woman, Kim Brophy, who is an ethologist, person who studies dog behavior, and she's written a book called Meet Your Dog, but she also does podcasts for a number of people, and this one was fantastic. So I'm going to put the link to Kim's book in the comments, and 2 podcasts, one that she did with Michael Shikaccio, and I forget who she did this one this morning with, but it was great. And I pulled this quote right out of the podcast, and it is, you need to know what kind of job your dog was born to do. You need to know if he's a sight hound, a guardian, toy dog, scent hound, gun dog, bulldog, herding dog, or a world dog. Your understanding about his historical purpose and how he was purposely bred to behave in certain ways is important to success in your relationship. And absolutely, because we can speak as dog trainers, Celeste and I, but we can also speak from a personal point of view as 2 women who between us own 5 herding dogs. So I just thought I'd use a herding dogs as an example because we have so many, probably because we run a lot of agility, we have so many herding dogs in our program, and you and I have personal experience. So just an example of how we've taken a working dog and tried to fit into modern life. So herding dogs were used to working 12 hours a day, and they herded sheep 12 hours a day, and then they slept 12 hours a night. No one now is, well, just certain places of the world, there's still the opportunity to do that. But, even over in England, where there's fewer and fewer sheep farmers these days. So we can't offer them that job at this point. And actually, a couple of other examples there too, before I go back to herding dogs. Hound dogs. They were bred to work independently away from people. And, we have a lot of owners with Vizslas and short-hair pointers, and they would like to take those dogs to the forest and let them off leash. But remember, you've got a dog that's supposed to go chase a prey animal and is supposed to work independently and not come back till they catch one. Yeah. So big problem out there in the forest with getting recalls on these home dogs. And, protection dogs, there's the third one, guardian livestock dogs, cane corsos, mastiffs. A lot of dogs bred for protection, but now people are buying them to live in a family-centered neighborhood with people, and people are social. We've got lots of kids coming and going in the house, lots of maybe neighbors, and you've got a dog who is a bit challenging to socialize and was bred not to be overly friendly to strangers in their lives. So, all of these dogs have a lot of behaviors that we don't want or like wired right into their DNA. So, to go back to herding dogs, I have 3, you have 2, and I bought herding dogs because I wanted really trainable dogs that paid lots of attention to me, and I wanted to run agility, and I like to train. Why did you buy herding dogs?
I honestly
never asked you.
No, you know what? I wanted because my first dog was a golden. That's an easy dog. Yeah. In the grand scheme of things. I wanted more of a challenge. So I went with the shepherd because I would like the intelligence. It was more than I thought. I'll be completely honest.
Yep. Talk about that.
But I grew to love it. So the second one had to be a herding dog too, for that reason.
Yeah. We all have all herding dog people have a habit of collecting dogs, because I know that our numbers are low compared to a lot of people. But I think what I didn't realize, I didn't know about the entire package. And certainly I would never own anything but Aussies again. But what I didn't realize was, and thank you, Kim Brophy, was that I was buying a type A hypervigilant control freak, because dogs they were bred to micromanage a herd of sheep and watch for babysitters at the same time.
Yeah.
So they had to be in control of every situation, and they were always working to establish order in their environment. So how does that translate into my house? If Brett comes in, okay, Brett's been the only person to walk through the door in the last 12 months, but the whole house still goes up when Brett walks into the door. Actually, if Brett walks from the sunroom to the living room, the whole house goes up. If I walk from the kitchen to the living room, the whole house goes up. And it's incredibly annoying. I can't stop it because that to them is just somebody changing the environment. And this is especially my oldest one, Annie, who is such a type A. So, somebody just walking into a room has already upset the status quo, and Annie has to desperately try to bring it back to order by barking. So I cannot ever probably realistically eliminate that in my house. I can control it. I can shorten the reaction time, thank God, but we've had to work very hard at that. But I am not going to change something that is bred into my dog's DNA for sure. Celeste, do you have any examples from your house?
Well, I would say Penny is the more obviously barky guardian one. Being a German Shepherd, she doesn't like anything unusual happening in front of the house. Today they're chopping trees and wood chipping. So I keep muting just in case. But because I can't, I'm never going to be able to completely prevent that.
No.
It's her job.
Yeah. Mine have been barking at the garbage truck on Tuesday morning for 8 years. And I look at them every Tuesday morning and go, it's the same garbage truck. And they go, yeah, it's bugging us. It's changed our environment. We have to do it. And I think your dog Gimli and my dog Rosie are lesser examples of this. They're more chilled, more easygoing, because in any breed, you're going to get variations on this.
Right.
And the other thing is that, and I think for both of us, is they are also bred to be looking to their humans for information all the time, because they had to know where to send the sheep and how fast to get them there. So there's often not an off switch for these dogs. So her dogs, if you don't find them a job, they will find their own job. It's usually not a job that anybody wants to have going on in their house. So you have to be prepared to spend a lot of time with these dogs, both giving them information and giving them real work to do. Mm-hmm. And, I know that in the last 12 months, we put 130 puppies through the Good Pup program. There was a pretty good percentage of Australian Shepherds and herding dogs and other herding dogs.
Yeah.
So, I guess the message we're trying to send here is, if you're going to get a dog, it would be a really good idea to determine if they are a true working dog, and if they are, what are they bred to do? And if they are, when you do find out what they're bred to do, how does that fit into your lifestyle? Mm-hmm. Because I know that there are a lot of people who have gotten in over their heads buying certain dogs this year, and I'm not being critical, it's just a thing we don't pick up. First of all, you've got all the evolution, and then you've got the breeding on top with these dogs. So they're incredibly capable, brilliant, fun dogs, but not always suited to a pet home, for sure.
Yeah, and if you're one to have a dog from a rescue shelter, it's the same deal. Look at the combination you're getting, and kind of be able to predict a little bit what you're going to get as a package.
Yes. Absolutely. And the other thing too is that as these dogs approach social maturity, the breed traits come out even more. So I've been told. So, a lot of people are a little bit shocked, when their dogs start to socially mature, because the breed traits, become even more evident, and it's, oh my God, how do we deal with this?
Yeah, that's true.
So you do have to, if you've got one, you got to get out there and do something with it, for sure, or you're going to have issues in the house. We still have issues in the house at times. I feel bad some days when we don't get out for 2 walks in a training session. So big evolution certainly and breeding is a huge factor in why dogs do all of the things we don't want them to do. So let's flip for a minute and talk about how dogs learn, because I think there's more to that than people realize as well. First, the first big spoiler alert here is that dogs just aren't learning when we're teaching them. But it's really easy to think that. I even think that at times. And I should know better. But it is super easy to think that we are the center of our dog's universe. And when we're not learning them, we're not learning them.
Learning them.
They're just turning their brains off and waiting for us to come back and offer more pearls of wisdom. But it doesn't work that way. Our dogs are learning all the time, every moment of the day. There's actually two kinds of learning that our dogs have, or they go through. Two ways they learn. And one is, of course, the one that we're all familiar with, related by consequences. So everybody's done that with their dogs. I know even, if they haven't been to a dog program because of COVID, everybody's learning stuff off the internet, although I hope it's good stuff learning off the internet. But, everybody knows how to teach their dog to sit. You lure your dog into position, you tell them to sit, and they sit, and you give them a cookie. And that's positive reinforcement. So if a good consequence follows a behavior, a dog will do more of it. And that is how we teach basic behaviors. But there is another way dogs learn, and it's not as obvious, and that is learning by association. So one event or situation predicts another, and that is called classical conditioning. And whether we realize it or not, classical conditioning is always present, even when you are doing what we call operant conditioning. Even when you're teaching your dog to sit, classical conditioning is still there. And classical conditioning isn't about the behavior. I'll explain it as I go here. It's not about your dog's behavior. It's about your dog's emotional response. And everybody on the planet, whether you have 2 legs or 4 legs, is classically conditioned, but we don't think about it. So, a human example, really obvious one, is you have a favorite restaurant. You go there every weekend, and you go to that one to the exclusion of all others. That's the behavior. You go to that restaurant, and you go there because it predicts good stuff. The food is fantastic. The staff are great. Beautiful restaurant. So it predicts a great experience for you. So you want to keep going there. And so that's the same with your dogs. If you can provide a great experience for your dog, it is really easy to teach so many behaviors. The thing is that most training schools you go to are focused on operant conditioning, where we teach the dog to sit and you give the dog a cookie, or you say the dog stay and you give the dog a cookie. But those behaviors, we have found, the operant conditioning doesn't always work out in the real world, because once you get your dogs out of the house and into the world, unless you are prepared to control them physically through their entire lives, we talked about this in our games Facebook Live, unless you have physical control of them, a lot of the behaviors you're asking your dogs to do are choice. It's the dog's choice to do it. So, if you're going to ask your dog to walk beside you, or stay even on a mat, or do a recall, come back to you, if the dog doesn't want to do it, what recourse do you have? What consequence can you offer the dog that they might learn from that consequence? It's really hard to do. If your dog doesn't come back when you call them, you put them on a leash, the dog's not learning anything about wanting to recall. So that's where classical conditioning comes in. You want your dog to develop a positive emotional response to those behaviors. You want them to think it's so much fun, that there's so much value in those behaviors. So, here's some examples of classical conditioning. If you pick up the leash in your house, your dog like goes, oh my God, because you're going for a walk. So the leash is predicting a fun thing of going for a walk for most dogs. In the puppy program right now, I have dogs who are not so thrilled about harnesses or leashes because they're so overwhelmed by the world that they're not that happy going outside at this point. So there you have a negative emotional response. But, if you got a dog who loves to go for car rides, I know in my house, the second I pick up the keys or even reach up to the key hook, Annie's at the door because she's the one that gets taken out in the car all the time. So she has a positive emotional response with my car keys. She goes, oh my God. From a training point of view, let's say you want a recall. You're trying to work on a recall with your dog. And your dog... every time your dog comes back to you, you throw a cookie party and you play a game with them and you have a great time. Dog thinks, wow, that was amazing. I want to come back. I love coming back to my owner. If you have a dog who shows up beside you and they get lots of cookies for that and you play another game, we have lots of games that we can play for loose leash walking. Your dog goes, oh my God, I love being beside Celeste. It's the greatest thing in the world. And you know that you can get your dogs to walk beside you, right? Celeste, they're happy to walk beside you.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Exactly. So, classical conditioning is a really important factor to take into account when you are looking at behaviors in your dog. Here's another, because it's the associations. Here's another association. Your dog starts to understand that when you have left the house, it is a great opportunity to go into the kitchen and open the garbage can. So, you leaving the house, leaving the dog alone with the kitchen gate open can certainly predict access to the garbage can in the kitchen. And why not? It's, dogs love garbage. That's what they were instinctively designed to do, is go off and be an opportunistic scavenger. So, you've got to start thinking about what associations your dogs are making. And there, as I said, there can also be negative associations. If you don't think your dog's coming back fast enough from a recall and you put them on the leash and give them grief about it, you're not going to get that the next time because they aren't building that positive association to coming back to you. So, the environment is a great example of classical conditioning because it predicts every single thing that dogs love. The world basically is Disneyland. It's the dog's version of Disneyland because it predicts so much great stuff. There's smells, there's other dogs, there's people, you can chase stuff, you can roll in stinky stuff. So a lot of people, a lot of our owners get really frustrated because, and we hear this all the time, is that, well, my dog is great in the house. They walk right beside me. They call me. When I call them, they're right there with me. They're paying attention to me. They look at me. They even might do it in the backyard for you. But the minute you go out the front door, the dog is pulling on the leash. The dog is like sniffing everywhere. The dog is like not paying any attention. They're not hearing anything. And that's super, super frustrating for people. But if you want to compete, then paying attention to you has to predict even better stuff than the environment does. And the environment actually isn't asking your dog to walk beside them on a loose leash or do a recall or, stay calm. The environment's just going, hey, here's all this great stuff. It's like a buffet. Come and help yourself. So, classical conditioning is super important out there. You cannot train a dog to come back to you if they don't want to. You can't train them to walk beside you. People ask me about that all the time. How can you make my dog do this? You can't, but you can build such a positive association to being with you through games and food and focus and lots of fun that you can compete with the world. Your dog doesn't have to drag you to every other dog. They don't have to, try and chase things. They don't have to, trip you with the leash. They can do everything that you need them to do. But what you have to do is you have to build that over time. It's not going to happen immediately. So you have to build what we call a reinforcement history to create that habit, that predictability of the dog responding to you. You have to keep offering all that great value consistently over time. So what you need to ask yourself is, when you walk out of the doors, where's the value for my dog? And if it's out there, you have to recreate it with you. Not an insurmountable task, although we do have herding dogs, and they are instinctively, encoded to pay attention to us. But you can do this with any dog. We know clients in our program who have golden retrievers who have dogs that look just as great as our dogs. They're totally focused on their owners. They have great recalls. They walk beside the owners. They pay attention to them. They're absolutely lovely dogs because they put in the time and they built massive value for the dog responding to them. So, okay. Celeste, do you know, are there any questions in any of the comments? We've got one more section to go through, but I just thought we'd stop and see if there were questions.
Let me just see. It's really noisy because the wood chipper's in front of my house right now. Can you stop barking at it? So, none that would go with what you're talking about right this second.
Okay, they're all pretty specific.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about poodle background, being retrieving and kind of a hunting dog.
Yeah, you know what? If people are interested about that, in Kim Brophy's book.
Yeah, it's excellent. She goes through.
Yeah, she goes through all those. And actually, she does it in a fairly humorous way. I liked it. Yeah, I didn't know poodles were hunting dogs. Yeah. So if anybody, like I can't comment to all those because I don't know the specifics, but if anybody's interested, definitely Kim's book is a good one. Okay, I want to talk about one more thing before we go. Owners, and believe me, I'm not being critical in any way, but people in general, including us, trainers too, we all tend to focus on or worry about fixing all those bad or annoying behaviors. And one of the reasons I talk so much about all of this other stuff we've been talking about is I'm hoping people understand that it's not about fixing the dog. Dogs are really good at being dogs. They're actually excellent at being dogs. No dog has ever failed at that. And these bad and annoying behaviors aren't wrong if you're a dog. It really is a case of perspective here. And so when we focus on fixing them or eliminating those behaviors now, as hopefully we all understand that really isn't a solution, because again, let me remind everybody that those behaviors, the dogs are engaging in those behaviors because they feel that they need those behaviors. Those behaviors are filling some need in the dog. So, first of all, we're worried about something that we can't fix. And it's a bit of a reactive response on our part. And trust me, I've done it more times than I can think of. And the other thing is that all of that attention and reaction to fixing or correcting those behaviors after they happen can actually be reinforcing to the dogs as well. So they're like kids, I've worked with kids for many years, and I met a lot of kids who thought any attention was great, whether it was positive or negative. Attention is very rewarding, and it doesn't matter if it's good or bad attention or positive or negative. So, when our dogs are barking And I am totally guilty of this. When the dogs are barking and our first response is to yell, shut up, stop, stop. And our dogs are going, wow, there they are. And look, they're barking with us. Isn't that wonderful? Oh, we're so happy we're all doing this together. You know, when your dog jumps up on you and you push them back down, you first of all, with the barking and the jumping up, you've already blown it because they've self-reinforced, because those behaviors are super reinforcing and they've already happened. And secondly, when you push the dog down, the dog goes, oh my gosh, oh great, we're going to wrestle. So, you know, jump up, push down, jump up, push down. So, oh look, we're playing a game. So correction usually isn't the answer. And a lot of correction, as we've seen out there in the world, is aversive and can frighten your dog. You know, even just yelling no in a stern tone of voice can frighten a puppy. And the corrections are not teaching your dog anything, and they're not effective. Ignoring, there's a lot of people out there who say if you ignore a behavior, it will extinguish. I don't think so. Simply because I just explained to everybody that jumping up and barking are reinforcing. So I know with Annie can stand in front of me for 15 minutes, usually when I'm in an awkward spot where I can't move, and she will just bark in the doorway at me. And you know, I'm ignoring it because I can't do anything else, but she'll just keep barking. It's so reinforcing for her just to stand there and bark at me. It's you know, so I'm never going to be able to do anything, you know, in terms of ignoring her. But what we can do, what we need to do, is replace those behaviors by creating value for the dog in offering the behavior that we do want. So again, it's a case of where's the value for the dog, and how can I move that value to something that how can I create value for something I want to do instead, more value even. So that's what we're going to do in part 2, because it's only part 1. We just wanted to go through the behaviors, explain them to everybody, so that you have something to think about this week while you're watching your dog, and hopefully a little bit of a different perspective. And in the meantime, here is some homework for you guys. I also suspect that, am I right, Celeste, there were a lot of specific, if there are some comments that's about specific behavior at this point.
Yeah, but there was one comment that I want to read, but I'll do it after you've assigned the homework, I think.
Okay, so next week we will talk about some techniques or some tips or some, you know, concepts in changing your dog's behavior specifically, and we will use some specific examples. I'm sure that, you know, people have thousands of specific examples. We can't address them all, but we will choose some. And in the meantime, I have some homework for everybody, just for fun. Instead of looking at and sort of focusing on all the behaviors that you want to fix, correct, or eliminate, start looking for behaviors that you want from your dog, because that's something that we do so easily, and certainly I do as well, is we can get really caught up in, oh, how do I stop this? How do I get rid of it? And we forget that our dogs are probably offering us really great stuff a lot of the time, but it's so easy to ignore the great stuff because it's not as annoying. So look for the behaviors you want. If you're going out on walks, make sure you have some reinforcers with you in case you see something. And at home, have some food reinforcers scattered around the house. I know we do, because we are working constantly on the barking and in the house and the over arousal. So we've got food stashed everywhere, so we can just grab it. I know I have a number of puppy clients who are doing that as well. And so whenever you see your dog do something that you like, just praise them and reinforce them, feed them. That's the easiest thing to do. And be interested in getting some comments from people next week about whether that changed any of your dog's behaviors over the week or not, whether you saw any differences in your dog. So we'll start you off on that one. And we'll add a lot more to that next week.
I would add something to that homework, just for people's interest.
Go for it.
Read about what your dog was actually bred for, so that you can understand a bit where your dog's coming from.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So you can get the book on Amazon. It's really easy.
Well, you can even Google it. What was a Vizsla bred for? What was a Border Collie bred for? And just kind of, it might give you some insight also on why they're doing certain things.
Yes. Yes. I think that's a great idea. And we would love to hear here in this week's comments or next week's, how that changed your perspective on your dog's behavior.
There's one comment that I wanted to read, because I'm thinking a lot of people feel this way. Victoria wrote, "We have a rescue who is thought to be a Husky Westie mix, a puller who chases things. Walking on a leash continues to be a struggle, but I'm glad it isn't a reflection of failure as an owner."
No.
So it's nice. Oh, sorry.
I don't think any owner is a failure, because we're all trying the best we can.
Yeah.
Right? We're all just seeking information. I look at that as owners who just need to get more information if they can, but nobody's a failure. No.
And the nice thing about that to me is, and again, if you do the homework of looking up what your dog was bred for, what the background is, then you get to work with the dog in front of you instead of just assuming dogs are all the same.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. Yes, absolutely. And it doesn't always immediately solve the problem. But after I read about my dogs and how hypervigilant they were to all of a sudden environmental change, and how Annie is desperately trying to restore order, I don't get as insanely fed up with them as I used to.
Because you understand.
I totally get it. And for the woman with whoever that was, or the man with the Husky, we bought a Malamute years ago. I wish I'd known all this back then. Because I went to grade 3 of a training program that we drove hours to. I won't mention which one it was, because I'm not a fan of it at this point, but it's the only one. We thought we had a really tough dog, and we had to go to a program that didn't mess around. And after 3 God knows, endless sessions, I think we even won a session, I was still never had a dog that I could take off leash, because it was a Malamute, and they are bred to be independent. I could. This was before I became a dog trainer. I might have more luck now. I was never successful at getting him to walk on a loose leash. And the interesting thing was that he would kill anything on 4 legs. Loved people, but was a killer. Cost us a fortune in cat bills, because we had a lot of cats. And I never understood why he was like that, except when I did some reading about, Malamutes and Huskies, and how they interact, with the Inuit people and whatnot, is they use them for sled dogs. But when they weren't working, they set them free, and the dogs were responsible for hunting and killing their food. So they weren't going to, if they were working. So maybe that was why I had a dog that tried to, kill everything on 4 legs, because killing cats is predation, it's food acquisition. It's not necessarily aggression. It's food acquisition. So maybe that was, built into his DNA, and I would never have known that back then, So,
knowing the background of your dog will influence how you decide to train it too. A training technique that would work on a herding dog might not work on a game dog, a hunting dog.
Absolutely. But that is not to say, and I totally agree with you, and let me add to that, is that, if you've got a hunting dog, already you've got a dog who is supposed to be independent and leave, it is still possible. There are ways that you could still teach that dog a fairly reliable recall.
But the reward would have to be different, probably, or how you engage it will be different. How you present.
So I'm Yeah, so
Yeah.
I don't want anybody to think, oh my God, these dogs have all these built-in behaviors, they've been bred for all these things, it's going to be impossible, it's going to be overwhelming, it's going to be so difficult to work with them. It's not. It's just you have to think about it, and as you said, Celeste, you have to often customize what you're doing.
Yeah.
But
Dog in front of you.
yeah, there are many ways to, as long as you stick with the basic science of training, there are many ways to deliver that basic science. So certainly we'll be happy to talk about that next week. So if you guys have questions for us next week, please feel free to pop them up here so we can take a look at them before the session starts, and we'll try and answer them all, but maybe we can't answer all of them, but we'll try and if we see it, we can probably answer with some general concepts that would fit the answers to a couple of questions. So pop them up ahead of time, guys, and we'll do our best to answer them.
Yeah, so, and if you if you read something interesting about the dog that you have too that you want to share, feel free to do that too.
Yeah, that'd be cool. That'd be very cool. Yeah. Yeah. So, and especially if it pertains to a training struggle that you're having, or it's training success. Who knows, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So I guess we'll go then, and we will see you here next week for part 2 of Why Does My Dog Do Whatever? And we're looking forward to it already. So thank you, Celeste, for joining me this morning, and everybody have a good day and stay safe out there.